Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on Rising to the Top, celebrating Book 2 and the contributors to this wonderful publication. My name is Dr. Marlene Kanga. I'm a chemical engineer, and I am the immediate past president of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. I was also the national president of Engineers Australia in 2013. I'm really proud to moderate this session featuring contributors to the book produced by the International Federation of Engineering Education Societies, or IFEES, and the Global Engineering Deans Council, or GEDC. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations, or WFEO, has a collaborative agreement with IFEES, and we have been so pleased to work together on this very important project. This event is part of the celebrations for World Engineering Day for Sustainable Development, which actually is on 4th March. But as we have had so many online events, we're hosting a number of other webinars and events over the next few days. On 4th March itself, there were more than 100 online events around the world. Some of you may know that I actually led the proposal for UNESCO member states to declare 4th March, the founding day of WFEO, as World Engineering Day. It's just a small example of how women engineers can and do lead around the world. And so, to the subject of today's webinar, the first of two, the second being on the 8th of March, we have leading women engineers around the world showing how they do it. And I'm sure we all want to hear their secrets of success. We have a stellar lineup, and I will introduce each one of them before I invite them to speak. First, a little bit about our organizations. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is the peak body for professional engineering institutions. Founded in 1968 under the auspices of UNESCO, we have some 100 national professional engineering institutions as our members and some 12 international and continental and regional members as our members. Altogether, we represent more than 30 million engineers. Our federation represents science and engineering at the UN and at UN organizations and is an associate of UNESCO. The International Federation of Engineering Education Societies connects engineering education societies globally to enhance global engineering education through collaboration between educational, corporate, and other organizations. And the Global Engineering Deans Council is a global network of engineering deans, industry affiliates, former deans, and other leaders in the field. Members include deans, rectors, principals of engineering colleges and faculties, and enables these leaders to connect to provide world-class engineering education programs. So we're really connecting with peak bodies in engineering education with IFEES and with GEDC. And so to our first speaker, I warmly welcome Professor Hans Hoyer, who initiated this project and has produced 2 books so far, Rising to the Top, Book 1 and Book 2. A little bit on the background of Hans Hoyer. He is Secretary General of the International Federation of Engineering Education Societies and Executive Secretary of the Global Engineering Deans Council. He was the driving force and inspiration behind the 2 Rising to the Top volumes, and volume 3 and 4 are in the pipeline. He's a resident scholar in global engineering at the George Mason University. He's an honorary professor at education institutes in Hungary, India, Kazakhstan, and Peru, an advisor to SUSTEC in Shenzhen, China, an ambassador to Monterrey Tech in Mexico. He is a governing board member for the International Center for Engineering Education at Tsinghua University, China, on the board of trustees of Tishk International University in Erbil, Kurdistan in Iraq, and an advisory board member and co-founder of the Indo-Universal Collaboration for Engineering Education. That all makes me feel very tired. I don't know how you do it with all the different time zones, Hans. Now, I'm going to quote a very telling paragraph that's in the book, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm quoting Hans when he says in the book, book 2, the goal of the first and second editions of Rising to the Top is for a new generation of female engineering leaders to be inspired by their peers. Equally important is that many of our male colleagues are sure to be positively impacted as they read about the unique journeys honestly shared within these pages. My hope is that this second edition will trigger even more men in the profession and in engineering education to seriously reflect on how they can be more effective, engaged, and sensitive in terms of supporting women in their leadership roles, regardless of what culture they live in. That's a powerful statement, Hans. I was privileged to be included in book 1, and we collaborated to invite so many contributors to book 2, many of them here tonight. Can you explain the idea of the book, and has that ideal that I've read out, has that come to pass, and has it made an impact?
Thank you, dear Marlene. It's a great pleasure and honor to see you, to be also with your colleague Ivan, and the support that he's provided, and of course with my colleagues and throughout the world here. As I was saying at the beginning of, as we were practicing here, I wish we were all together in person. I look forward to the opportunity to sit next to each one of you and share a wonderful meal and conversation, and we will. I know these are difficult times for you personally and for your families and colleagues during this COVID crisis. We will overcome that with patience and good faith and mutual support, which has been a wonderful key indicator and motivation also in terms of writing our book together as a team, Marlene. It's just been a great privilege to work with you as a leader of WFEO, but many, many other leadership positions. And each of my colleagues and friends here that I hear awesome leaders in their respective environments here. Let me just make a few reflections here that I want to share with you here. In my global responsibilities to lead both the Global Engineering Deans Council and the International Federation of Engineering Education Societies, a critical issue and opportunity over this past decade since these organizations have been in place has been to identify and more deeply understand the role of women leaders and deans globally. Many of our colleagues, regardless of what position they occupy in the engineering profession, and regardless of their cultural background, but as I sort of look around, we work on in touch with all 6 continents. It's just simply amazing. They face challenges. These 2 books here, and I'm working closely and seeing you personally, some of you here today, is just an important step towards achieving a broader understanding of these challenges. We have also begun the process, as Marlene just indicated, to write a 3rd and 4th edition, focusing on India and focusing on Africa. Very exciting journey, complex, challenging, but I'm working with those leaders also in those 2 regions of the world. We hope that the 3rd and 4th editions will be completed by June per se. And I'm also, we're already with some colleagues beginning to reflect the possibility for a 5th and maybe even 6th edition. Here's how the idea of creating such books started. Years ago, I had the opportunity, as I was living in Nairobi and working throughout Africa for several years, I had the opportunity to visit Sudan while I was living in Nairobi. I traveled extensively throughout the region despite some of the political, even war-related challenges faced in many of the countries there. And I was so pleased that I met a very special individual in my journey here, Tagwa Musa, the only female engineering dean at that time in that complex society of Sudan. And she decided to join GEDC. We've become, and of course, Soma knows her very, very well also per se. We've become not only professional peers and colleagues, but close friends that discuss and share their journeys, their challenges in a way that I feel very privileged and honored in my role to work with them. So I reached out to her and to ask if she would share with our global community some of her reflections about the challenges she has faced as a leader in this little understood African country. I was delighted when she responded positively to my request to write a thoughtful article, which we published in our IFEES GEDC Global Bulletin. When I read her article, I was inspired. I'm inspired by her vision, her commitment, the courage and capacity to deal with a variety of obstacles, and felt that more people should have a window on the experience and women around the world in engineering education. So I decided to reach out to many of my close colleagues throughout the 6 continents of the world and friends around the world, and ask them if they would also be willing to share their personal journey as a female engineering leader in their respective countries. The responses were overwhelmingly positive, and more than in total, when I look at the first edition and the second edition, where Marlene and I worked very, very closely, over 52 leaders from every continent agreed to share their personal and professional experience by writing a chapter for the first and second edition. I feel inspired, humbled, and grateful for the thoughtfulness demonstrated by each and every contributor. And I'm just so pleased personally, not just intellectually, personally, to see my colleagues here today, and we're together here, Marlene, and to share this moment. And I hope that the readers will appreciate the fact that these engineering leaders are so openly sharing with the world their individual journeys, no matter how difficult that journey has been. I was fortunate to be able to get it started and working closely again with this outstanding leader that I've just been inspiring to many of us, as Marlene Kanga, who's facilitating our conversation here. An important leader we know who resides in Australia, but has a global impact in terms of her influence and her thoughtfulness that she has. She played a key role as we identified other women leaders and new voices to contribute their stories. And as she just said here, and I just wanted to share again here, because to me that's really important, this issue in terms of the dialogue, the meaningful, not only intellectual, but at a personal level, dialogue and communication between men and women that mutually face, and as I was saying at the beginning of my comments, tremendous challenges during this crisis that we're all living here. The goal of the second editions of Rising to the Top is for a new generation of female engineers, leaders, to be inspired by their peers. Equally important, and this is really, really critical. I'm learning daily as I listen, and an honor to listen and learn from my colleagues. Equally important is that many of our male colleagues are sure to be positively impacted as they read about the unique journeys honestly shared within these pages. And I've had a lot of my colleagues in the 6 continents, men colleagues, share that with you. My hope that these editions will target even more men in the profession, and that is critical. And in engineering education, to seriously reflect on how they can be more effective, engaged, and sensitive in terms of supporting women in their leadership roles, regardless of what culture they live in. Hopefully, there will be more opportunities for all of our colleagues, women and men, to talk openly and frankly about their own journeys, despite having very different backgrounds. After all, the many commonalities shared by deeply committed leaders are a powerful way to to make a real difference in this complex global environment we all are currently living and will be living in. I feel honored and fortunate to be able to accompany so many colleagues and friends on this important journey. These are the comments, Marlene, I wanted to share, but also I didn't want to forget, given that we are together, we see each other, some of us here. Also, one of the amazing, she was a close personal friend of mine, an inspiring leader, Lueni Morel, passed away. And we will be honoring, and I'm working very closely with good friends and colleagues throughout Latin America, and given primarily her Latino background in Puerto Rico and having worked there, we are focusing and have a premium working in partnership with Innova High-Ed, the organization that she founded that we've been working with, together with IFEES, together with the Latin American Dean's Council, a premium to honor her this year. I just wanted you to be aware. I'm very proud to announce that, and I'll be sending out the announcement this coming week per se, honoring her memory. We have some information about her background, but she, together with many of you, mutually inspired so many of us in her work throughout her career, and I personally miss her, we all miss her, but feel inspired by her vision and the issues that she was deeply committed to. So thank you kindly, Marlene, all of you. I'm just really honored and pleased to be with you and listen and learn from you as you continue your reflections this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. All the very best to you, Marlene.
Thank you, Hans. And I have to say, and I'm sure all the women on the panel here will agree, it's a very rare thing, unfortunately, sadly, for a man to make the kind of statement that you have made in terms of trying to understand what the issues are for women and that's holding them back, and the need to support and mentor and sponsor women. The statement that you made is so inspiring, and I hope that it really makes change and that more men do read these books and get a deeper understanding of what the issues are, because we need this change very urgently for sustainable development. So thank you very much for your work. It is really making some change, and we need more change. But the fact that as a man that you've made this statement is very, very important, and we don't underestimate it. And I think all the women here will agree with me on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So now we move to Soma, another mover and shaker. We've got quite a few chemical engineers on tonight. I'm a chemical engineer, and Soma is a biochemical engineer, academic and educator. She's the vice president and treasurer of IFEES and president of the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education, which has members in 36 countries. She's held various academic positions in the USA at the University of Wisconsin, Delaware, and Kansas. And she's currently education programs lead at ANSYS Inc., based in Cambridge, United Kingdom. She leads educational programmatic resources in the materials business unit, providing teaching resources for materials education worldwide. She's also a consultant in educational service to providers worldwide, helping them to develop continuing engineering education programs. Soma was a member of the coordination committee for Rising to the Top volumes 1 and 2. So in the second volume, a new group of inspirational female leaders share their compelling journeys, as Soma says, in what is often seen as a male-dominated field. For engineers to solve the grand challenges facing humanity, the field needs all talents to continue to be innovative and inclusive for the advancement of all members of society. These new stories share an even wider global context, from the experiences of inspiring women engineers from Bolivia to Ghana to Iran and beyond. By openly sharing their personal journeys in these pages, the authors hope to not only inspire the next generation of engineering leaders, but also provide valuable insights into the challenges facing women engineers around the world and the opportunities that are theirs for the taking. So Soma, that's a very powerful statement that's on the back of the book. And I was going to ask, so what do you think the impact of the book has been so far? It's been out for less than a year. And what's the feedback that you've been getting on it?
So, first of all, thank you so very much for having me in this webinar and this panel with esteemed colleagues and a man who stands behind a lot of women engineers. That's our dear Hans. So I have been fortunate to be involved in the coordination of the first book and the advisory committee, as well as in the second book. Second book has been recently published, so it's not there for a very long time, but already I have heard many inspiring comments from my colleagues. Now, I work for ANSYS Granta, and ANSYS is a world leader in engineering simulation, and we have many women engineers there. And through a webinar, they came to know about these 2 volumes, and they started reading those. And the inspiring comments I get is that, oh, I thought, yes, that's the book. I thought I was the only one who was having all the issues. I am not alone. And sometimes some of the things that we see other people have gone through make us believe that not just we are not alone, but also sometimes in some cases some of us are privileged. So I mean, when I first read Tagwa Musa, about whom Hans was talking, Tagwa's article made me think so many times that we have to know about how women engineers are doing in every part of the world. The first book covered a limited number of areas and the geographical areas, but the second book kind of opened to the areas which we were not able to get into, and bringing back the stories of the women engineers from there, which is kind of intertwined with the cultural orientation there, the education system there, the family system there, in some system there are the fathers are more dominating than the mothers, and vice versa in some other systems. So every bit of it comes through each of these stories. The other thing that really stands out is that mentoring is something extremely important. And when I have met colleagues from ACEEE and colleagues in my company and IACEE, International Association for Continuing Engineering Education, and of course IFEES colleagues and GEDC colleagues, one thing that comes out of these stories, especially in the second volume, is that we encounter many problems as women. I mean, sometimes men don't encounter those problems, but somehow the problems may be on the surface, they are different. But if you look deeply, there are similarities, and there are things that we all have encountered in some way or other. Someone or other, either when we were children or when we were doing our engineering education, or when we went to work and at different stages, someone or other has told us that, oh, you are not good enough. And we took a pledge and we overcame those. And bringing all these voices together as a book, the first and second volume, but the second volume is, I think it's stronger, and we also gained a lot of experience in coordinating and advising. I think it really gives a lot of hope to young women, and that was our one of our thoughts, that the young women who want to become engineers, regardless of which country each one of them is now, regardless of what is the situation, they will get inspiration and they will make sure that they overcome all the challenges that they want. There is a woman in my organization, Vidyu. She's originally from India, has gone through a lot of different issues in her childhood, and eventually became a very good engineer. And she said she cried when she read both the volumes. She has both the volumes, and she said, I cried because the first thing is I'm not alone. Second thing is that my daughter will be so inspired, and that's what the impact is. We want to have our next generation to be inspired by these stories.
Yes, I agree, Soma. It is inspiring, and I was very moved by those stories myself. So many of you, I think I know you so well, but all your stories inspired me, and there was something for me to learn. There's always something for me to learn. And so mentoring is always important.
Right.
And I wanted to say to those who are listening to tonight's webinar, buy the book. And we will send you the link to buy the book. You can buy an ebook or the paper copy, and it certainly would be well worthwhile. I think it's one of the probably most worthwhile things you could do for your career, because it's a rich source of advice for you and to support you in your career from real women who've actually done it. Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we're looking forward to books 3 and 4 as well.
I know. Thank you.
Yes. So now we come to Carlien Bou-Chedid, who is from Ghana. Carlien is an independent consulting, structural and earthquake engineer and president of the Federation of the African Engineering Organizations, the first woman to achieve this position, very important for Africa. She was president in 2017 to 2018 of the Ghana Institution of Engineers, which is a national member of WFEO. Carlien serves on several boards, including the Electricity Company of Ghana and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. She has used her earthquake engineering knowledge to advise on issues relating to the vulnerability of buildings and chairs an expert committee advising Ghana's government on earthquake preparedness and response. So Carlien, where are you? Oh, I see you now. As the first female president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, what do you see as the priorities for your term for progressing gender equality for women, especially in STEM in Africa?
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. My first priority is going to be visibility. I think that visibility for those who have actually gone into these fields in STEM is very, very important. Very often, especially when it comes to engineering practice, all the work we do is more or less under the radar, and this applies to both men and women. And it's especially important for us to be more visible to the society. And so I will be doing a lot or concentrating a lot on visibility for women in STEM. This will do a number of things. You have, of course, young girls who may never have seen people in these positions. Certainly, they may never even have seen women in these positions. And even when they have seen women in these positions, they don't know exactly what kind of work we do. And I believe that by showcasing the kind of work that we do to everybody in the society, you get young girls more interested in these fields. You also get parents to understand that these are fields that their children can do. So if you have barriers within the society to young girls entering some of these fields, just by having these examples and so on, it becomes a little more difficult for parents to say, oh, this is not for women, and so on. And of course, teachers. Teachers will also understand that these are areas that their students can enter, and perhaps in teaching, they will be more open to discussing some of these things with them. And governments and decision makers and so on. they are also part of the society, and sometimes they do not even understand that they are women in these fields and they need to be encouraged. So visibility, number one, and number two main areas, removing the barriers. So there's a lot going on. We need to understand a lot of the barriers that are there for women. And so we will be doing research in those areas, the barriers within society, the barriers within educational institutions, and the barriers in industry that prevent women from staying in the fields. So barriers within society, we will need to do a lot of consultation. If you look around Africa, the barriers may vary. And some time ago, I just did a simple survey, not a scientific survey, by just asking the female engineers, please ask your colleagues, what are some of the things they think within their countries prevent females from entering the field? And they came up with so many answers, and I believe that maybe we need to do that a little more scientifically and to find solutions for those barriers, which we can then present to governments. Then within education, of course, the teaching of science and maths, it's done differently in different countries. And in some countries, women have said that the way they were taught just puts them off those subjects. And so we need to be able to advise on what can be done. Then within the tertiary institutions, those who actually manage to get into these fields also face all sorts of problems. And one way of tackling that is to come up with criteria for accreditation of these tertiary institutions. And in working on these educational criteria for accreditation, we could then require gender-sensitive policies to let every institution have those policies. Good. And then it comes to industry. The Federation of African Engineering Organizations has now opened its doors to engineering industries. And we hope to be able to create a list of industries, preferred industries, industries that we know have safe practices, environmentally friendly practices, and so on. And one of the policies we could require them to have would be gender inclusive policies that recognize the role of women in their societies, recognize the role of women as childbearing females who need, their needs need to be taken care of. So there are a number of ways that these things can be tackled, and these two areas are the areas I will be concentrating on: visibility and policies and so on to remove the barriers.
Yeah, well done, Carlien. And I just wanted to mention on accreditation, you may be aware that I'm working on with the International Engineering Alliance, the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, has a working group to review the engineering education benchmarks, that is the requirements for graduate attributes and professional competencies. This is a project that's been ongoing since November 2019, and stage one is coming to an end. Hopefully the new framework will be approved in June 2021. And one of the things that we have done is to bring in diversity and inclusion, not just gender, but broad diversity into the requirements for graduate attributes and professional competencies in the ways engineers work together in inclusive teams, ways of communication, and so on. So we've put it in several parts. We've also included it in ethics. It's a part of your ethical responsibility to be inclusive. So we're hoping that this will make change, and this is a way of, as you've correctly pointed out, policies. This is a structural change, which we hope will transform engineering from the inside out. And we actually had a consultation webinar for women to provide their feedback, which has never happened before. And that's on our WFEO website. So we're very much aligned, and I'm so pleased to hear your ideas, and we're ready to support you. And some of us have done some of the things you mentioned in other countries. So if there are some examples that can accelerate what you're doing, we're there to help and support. And congratulations, we're so proud of you, Carlien, in your position. And that's an extraordinary leadership position for the world, because Africa is such a priority for gender, especially for STEM. So well done, congratulations, and we're really thrilled about that. So now we move to June Hada, who's from Nepal. June is a founding member of the Women in Science and Engineering of WISE Nepal. She is an architect and urban planner and is working in Nepal in rural and urban planning and development. That is rural roads, bridges, alternative and non-motorized transport, renewable and clean energy, and urban environmental services. June has worked with national and international development organizations, including the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP, and consulted to the World Bank, ASEAN Development Bank, and other agencies. So welcome, June. We're really pleased to have you here today. And as a leader for infrastructure development in Nepal, why is sustainable development, and in particular, areas like renewable energy, important?
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you for having me here. I mean, it's really an honor to be here, actually, to be with all of you. Marlene, you have been my role model for since I met you. Okay, so let's talk about renewable energy and why it is important for sustainable development, right? So, being involved in renewable energy for quite some time, I'm also, a board member of one of the hydropower company, private hydropower company in Nepal, which provides electricity services to the rural areas. So being involved in that renewable energy, I think that it is one of the only source of energy, clean energy source that would really make sustainable development, that would really contribute to the sustainable development of the world. I mean, energy is required for everything that we do, right? We have been using energy sources for doing anything from, lighting our houses, cooking, doing businesses and all sorts of things. But when we use non-renewable energy sources, it is polluting the environment, it is contributing to the depletion of resources and all that. So we need to actually use renewable resource for energy. Talking about Nepal, we are so rich in water resources, probably one of the richest countries in water resources. We have potential of developing hydropower of at least 83 gigawatts of energy from using water resources only. And out of that technically or environmentally feasible energy, electricity generation would be 43 gigawatt of energy. We have so much of resources, but yet we have not been able to capitalize on those resources as yet. So far, until now, we have only used 2 to 3% of that hydropower resources, and it contributes to the overall energy mix of the country. Basically, if we talk about Nepal, we have been dependent on biomass energy for domestic purposes. 12% of our energy is coming from petroleum resources, which we actually import from India. At least 800 millions of dollars are spent annually for the import of these fossil fuels, coal and petroleum. If we had used these resources to build our own hydropowers, we could have made a lot of changes in our ways of lives. So I think it is very, very important if we would be able to use as much as renewable energy resources for our lives and our other doing businesses and all those things, it will be contributing to the sustainable development of the world actually. So that's what I wanted to say. Actually, this energy is contributing to all 17 goals of sustainable development. So it's very important that we should be able to use this renewable resource of energy. Even in the world, it's only about 20% of world's energy is being produced using renewable resources. So the way we are using our natural resources, it's not sustainable at all. The way we are using our forest, the way we are using our fossil fuels, it's not at all sustainable. So we need to switch to the renewables. That's what I really wanted to say. It's
thank
just
you.
a
That's
small,
very important.
yeah, it's
Go
just a
ahead.
very small contribution, but it really, I mean, we really need to change the way we do businesses.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. Thank you, June. That's very pertinent today. And as you know, Goal 7 is on energy,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
as you say, if there is energy, it contributes in so many other aspects of life, in the economy, in education, in health, and so on.
Yeah.
And if you can produce energy without impacting the environment and at low cost, it can have a huge impact on the economy and on the country's economic prosperity. So well done on the work that you're doing. I know that Nepal has, has a lot of difficulties. I know you worked through the earthquake at one point.
Yes.
So, we commend you for your efforts and the impact that you're having there. So thank you for that. And it's
Thank you,
as an
Marlene. Thank
engineering
you.
leader. Yes.
Thank
So
you,
now we
Marlene.
go to, thank you, June. Thank you. So now we go to Dr. Lydia Tansinsin. Lydia, you're on mute, so I hope you can hear us. Lydia is a leading light, a leading woman engineer in the Philippines. She's a chemical engineer, another one of us, a founding president of the Philippine Technological Council, which is a national member of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, and the current chair of the Accreditation and Certification Board. She was a cabinet assistant secretary in the Philippine government, Department of Science and Technology and Engineering, and directed a $80 million project to improve secondary and tertiary education in the Philippines. She's received numerous awards, including the WFEO 2019 Women in Engineering Award and the Outstanding Engineer Award from the Federation of Engineering Institutions of Asia and Pacific, or FEAP. Lydia, you are an inspiring leader and a role model for me in what you have done. And you've been a leader for many decades in the Philippines and have had an enormous impact on engineering education. What drives you to continue to make a difference?
Thank you, Marlene, for the introduction. Good evening, good morning, and everybody. Sorry, everybody. Well, the impact, probably why I'm continuing all of this up to this time, is that I wanted to really to assist our engineers. Partly because when I was going on to meetings in different countries, I found engineers to be just either they're known to be technologists or technician, but not as an engineer. So I thought, what's wrong? These people have the same educational attainment, and why can't they be called engineers in the places we have gone to work, especially those who have in different foreign countries, So I said I should really continue trying to help by having a sort of ideas where we can really make them be known as really an engineer, not just a technologist and not a technician. Unfortunately, they're being tagged as that, but they're doing the work of the engineers. The engineers, probably the head of the agency will just sign the paper, but everything is done by the Filipino engineers, and who are not called only technologists or technicians. It's really unfair, isn't it? So I said we should really do something about this, especially with our organization. As you are aware, we are, we have a very big number of associations by discipline. Unlike in other ASEAN countries where they have only one engineering institution. Now we have, I would say, 14 engineering institutions, association by discipline. So we have to put them together so that we can at least do something for our colleagues, especially those who are working outside of the country and even in our country. Okay, so this happened to be. That's why the Philippine Technological Council was born in 1978. So I was then the president of the Philippine Institute of Chemical Engineers, and I said, let's work together to help our colleagues, especially those who are working outside, who are really doing their best to contribute and to send their probably friends to their work in their own workplaces. So we have this educational system that we have also to improve. So improving the educational system. The Department of, it was known as the National Science and Development Board before it became a Department of Science and Technology. That time, our secretary, who is the Department of Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, thought of having a big program to really improve our educational system for the engineering. And so we call it Engineering and Science Education Project. And we have to make a loan from the World Bank. And it's so difficult because our department, this was the only first time that they are borrowing money, and we have to do the whole works, how to, I would say, justify why we are borrowing money and giving it to the schools that we have identified to be leading schools in engineering. And so that happened, and we have really improved our engineering education also. At the same time, having this registry of ASEAN registry, we were able to at least help our colleagues outside of the country to be known as engineers and not just technologists. So to continue our educational, we have this accreditation system also, which we now, because we are only a provisional member of the of Washington Accord, we try to our very best to, because we have a different system, though we have the American system that was partly modified. Our educational system before was that we have only six years in the elementary, then 4 years in high school, and then in college for engineering, we have 5 years. But the emphasis on the high school is not STEM. So it's up to you how to be able to really work out to be I would say you have a very good background in STEM. No, but however, nowadays we have this different educational system where we have increased the number of years to 12 years, 6 years, and then 6 years for the high school, and then 4 years for college. This is the present system now. 4 years college for engineering and mostly for other subjects and other discipline in education. So we have different, compared with the ASEAN countries where they have been colonialized by the British, they followed completely the system. In our case, it was modified, So now we have the accreditation system under the Washington Accord, and we are trying to have our graduates comparable and globally competitive with other engineers of the whole world. Now, talking about the why I'm still working very hard, because I wanted really to help. This is a voluntary work, and to help in the accreditation and helping also in registering and making policies to be able to really assist our engineers in the different aspects of their practices. Policies that we have to make. For example, now we are now trying to have a national registry of engineers, which we do not have, with description of what these engineers can do, and those who have been they have their expertise exposed, so that those who would like to hire them would have already an information of what they are going to get. So we're having to have this national registry aside from the ASEAN engineering registry and also the APEC engineering registry. We also, in fact, this afternoon we discussed about this different assistance that we can extend to our engineers, and also how to make them globally competitive. One of them is that we want them to be, we'd say, trained on, probably you're aware, this FIDIC, where your engineers can be consultants, because most of our engineers are just employed and they have not really explored of being probably an expert. They are expert, but they are not consultants. See, it's experts in their line of work, but we want them to be consultants, because in our country, most of the consultants are foreigner. Our good engineers are not really helping in being a consultant, or probably they are consultants in other countries, but not in our country. But they're most of our engineers are not really with PEG, or probably they have not explored the idea of being a consultant. Okay, so we want them also to be consultants, easily to have earned in their experience and their capabilities to be consultants, so that our government can really be assisted, because our government now with this built and built, we need a lot of consultants also.
Yeah, no, I can feel your passion, so I wish Lydia. I can feel the passion. Yes, and we know why you're going. You have a lot of energy and a lot to contribute. It's amazing. More than 40 years ago, you set up the Philippine Technological Council and have taken the Philippines to the international level to become a provisional signatory of Washington Accord. And this is having a huge impact on the country. And I think it's a great example of how women can lead and make a difference. And we've had four, including Soma. We have so far all speakers in different fields. We felt their passion and the huge difference they're making and the huge contribution that each of you are making in your own country. I think that's amazing, and I think this is the kind of story that we need to tell. So Lydia, thank you very much for telling us, about your work. And I know that this really keeps you going, and whether you're paid or not, I can see that you love it and that you're going to keep doing it. So well done, and keep on inspiring us as well. Thank you for that. So now we're going to move on to Valerie. Valerie Agberagba is a metallurgical and materials engineer and is presently the head of the Renewable Energy Department at Niger Delta Power in Nigeria. She is a past president of the Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria. She served as vice president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and was chair of the WFEO Committee for Women in Engineering from 2015 to 2019. Valerie is passionate about mentoring young engineers, especially women. So Valerie, where are you? Can we see you? Valerie, we wanted to ask you a question. Are you there? Yeah, Valerie, you founded an organization to mentor young women scientists, engineers and scientists in Nigeria. Why, in your view, is mentoring so important? I think Soma has already talked a little bit about it, but perhaps you can tell us from the African context why it's important.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marlene. I want to first of all appreciate you for what you're doing and how you've been an inspiration to us as women engineers. Your tenure as president, you repositioned women engineers in WFEO, and I would say globally too. So you're an inspiration. Thank you very much. I also want to appreciate Soma and Professor Hans for betting this rising to the top. And just like Soma summarized, said mentoring is extremely important. If you look through the stories of every woman in the first edition and the second edition, you realize that we probably would have had a better start if we were mentored from the very beginning. And so for me, this rising to the top is going to serve as a great mentoring tool.
We've lost you. We've lost your sound.
Engineering careers. So for me, can you hear?
Let's get closer. Keep going. I think we've lost the connection with Valerie. Just give it a few minutes. Valerie, maybe turn your camera off so we can at least hear you. We've lost Valerie. I think she's going to try and connect. Oh, here she's coming back.
If you hear us, Valerie, you shall disconnect and reconnect to the webinar, please.
We may move to Lydia and come back to Valerie. Give her a few minutes to reconnect. So Lydia, we'll come to you while we wait for Valerie to rejoin us. So Lydia is from Poland. Lydia Zakowska, Professor of Transport Engineering in the Krakow University of Technology Civil Engineering faculty. Her international research concentrates on engineering for sustainable development, mobility, accessibility, and equity of transport users, environmental protection, climate change, and safety. Lydia has authored more than 100 research papers and is a member of several journal editorial boards. She is a founding member of the WFEO Committee for Women in Engineering, an active member of INWES Europe, a past president of the Polish Association of Engineers and Technicians of Transportation Studies, a founder of the WIE network at Krakow University of Technology, and Secretary General of the Women VAI network, a lot of leadership positions. Dear Lydia, you've been active in women engineers networks at INWES and in Poland for many years. Why are these networks important and what has been achieved, especially in Europe, and what needs to be done?
Good morning. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you all that we can discuss and move. I cannot see myself. I don't know why, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So with all this privilege to be today with you, this shows why cooperation is important. Cooperation is important because it gets empowerment. And that's the very first clue I would like to start from. The
other person
of each of us is different, but if we look from my perspective from Poland, from a women engineer and without engineering background like parents or grandparents in engineering, I still as a researcher and teacher reflect to our great lady, to Marie Curie Skłodowska. And if we look at this over 100 years, a lot has changed and happened to women in science. But still, if at that time it was so difficult that women could study even, she had to belong to a special society, to go with a special another woman to sit at the lecture room, if she could do that, like Marie Curie, for example, to have the environment who could understand, and that was very, very rare. It was not usual at that time. So now, let's say those barriers just disappeared, we may say, especially in Europe. We may conclude that after these 100 years, since a woman received 2 Nobel Prizes, no one by now could do the same. And such an icon lady showed us that being alone is difficult, because after next 100 years, no other achievement like that could be made by women, and still she had a huge opposition. What was the situation at that time? If you remember, I was studying her bio. Women were against. So she could not have the community supporting her. The only first were from the next generation, like her daughter, etc. What is the situation today? I'm really closely related not only to those associations and societies which keeps people in power of we can do more. We are strong because we are not a single one. So from this point of view, I would like to give you some example of today's approach. Since 20 years, Poland is already within European community. And since that time, I'm involved in research in European founding research projects, which means that you really need to have a close research cooperation with members and associations from not only the Europe, but basically for research, for this European research community. And one of the recent projects that we are just about to complete after 4 years is about gender equality in engineering through communication and commitment. This is a Horizon project, and my university, under my privilege to lead, we are building the very first gender equality plan. And because of that, I had to learn not only what is in the world, not only how these rules of, let's say, very nice and democratic law in the European community, but how it is inside in my university, which is a pretty big one. It's about 20,000 of students. Anyway, we have a very, very strange, and it was not easy to understand why. We have the same level of male and female students. And then for PhD, for master, etc. Then when it comes to the upper professorship and doctorate, it goes like to nothing. So finally, I interviewed 10 unbelievable women who got a success in engineering, and they told us a lot of nice stories. So not only my stories are important now, but what I learned from them. For example, that women has to trust in their capabilities more. They have an intellectual power, but within these societies of male-dominated engineering in Poland still, especially at universities, they do not trust they could do something by themselves. They have more capabilities, they can achieve more, but they have to trust. And in fact, that the world is perceived, the way how women perceive the surrounding, the world, the engineering, the communication capabilities is a huge chance for a better and more sustainable world. And because of that, we know that all those interrelations between women and also women and men made as associations and cooperation are so much crucial and important. If you're alone, you have not such a wide microphone, but within a group. So I'm proud to starting even from the top, from the World Federation, but right now also working from the bottom up. And we have a pretty young, not known very well, organization, which is a VMA. It's like Women in Engineering at our university, which is a mentoring group. All of those professors, women who were sitting in their small cabinets and were not showing up because they were thinking, maybe I'm the only one. You know, if we gathered our power, we have plenty of interest from all PhD students, etc. And on the other hand, I would like to say that gender equality plans are so important. It's not easy way to go through this in engineering because these barriers are connected with stereotypes, but having a real document can be done only by cooperation between men and women. And what we are and I'm especially proud also of starting this cooperation and interrelation within the research and social sciences, and this approach to engineering, which is really a modern one coming to sustainability. So we have since 4 years now, so-called Women Way, which is women and men in environment and artificial intelligence. And it gathers engineers, not only from universities, also from the business sector in Europe, but coming outside Europe. For example, our research projects are for Africa. And within that cooperation, we can have huge amount of understanding, empowerment, help, and trust. Trust that cooperation between men and women is possible. And of course, it must be, the background must be within capabilities and what we can do. So thank you again for all
thank you.
the possibilities to make it possible. I mean, to make possible empowerment for all talented women who trust in themselves much more and make like a speedy, really to show that without women perspective on how it is in development of sustainable engineering, it's not possible to make it by men only. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lydia, for those very insightful thoughts. And again, I say to our audience, much of this wisdom is in the book. So please, I encourage you to read it. And we've all been there and done that. So you can learn from us and how we've climbed through our careers and achieved so much. And now I'll go back to Valerie. She's here. Valerie, welcome. Sorry, you got cut short. You were talking about the importance of mentoring, and it's a very good continuation of what Lydia has just had to say as well.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Marlene. Sorry for that interruption. I was on the official network, so I had to change. I think it's good to conclude even with what I'm talking about, which is mentoring. Just like I said, when you look at the different stories of the women, you realize that we would have had a better start if we were mentored at our time. But unfortunately, some of us did not experience that. And so our early start as engineers was a little bit wobbly, but with time and with mentors along the way, we were able to find our footing and able to develop in our engineering path. So mentoring provides the necessary guidance for career. But we realize that most times we spend a lot of time talking about career choice. We forget to talk about the career as a profession. And so people are misled, and you choose a career choice and you really don't know much about it. And that's where mentoring has come into play. Mentoring provides the necessary guidance for your career choice. It exposes people to be able to grow in their career and help them to build skills. It also creates confidence, especially for us as women. Just like Lydia said, we are not as bold as we should be. We're afraid, can we succeed? And that's the common thought amongst the men, that you are a woman, you are not able to go to sites to do what the men are doing. But because we are there to mentor one another, our confidence is being built daily. I started in a very different environment, but due to mentoring, looking at those who were before me, I was able to build my confidence, especially when you find yourself outside the education environment. So for us, it is very important to go back to the undergraduate days to mentor these ones on how they can build their career path. They really need to know why they are doing these courses. What are the opportunities for me outside the university environment? It is not just mentoring outside work, but outside university environment, they need to know their expectations. They need to know that I am able to do what I have chosen. And for this career I've taken, there are so many choices for me. And so when we build and create a mentoring organization, which was what led me to it, because I realized I was not mentored the way I should, and having experienced that, I shouldn't allow others to go through the same thing. We need to build the next generation. We need to empower them. We need to guide them and also lead them to the right choice. Engineering is changing, it's not dynamic. And even while mentoring them, we, the older ones, get to know a lot more about the innovative things happening. I've learned a lot from the young ones, even being able to get on the webinars most times and do things you need to do. You need to get the younger ones to be with you. So mentoring is not just a one-way thing, it's a double-way track. And so it's important for us to learn from them. It's also important for them to learn from us and not be able to make the mistakes we all made before. Though mentoring is not fully recognized, but then we know that through mentoring, most of us are able to know our strengths and weaknesses, which will help us in also excelling in our engineering profession. So for me, I would think mentoring is very important. Soma said it. He said, it is extremely important. Those were her words, and I noted it. It's not what we should overlook. Wherever we find ourselves, we should create that opportunity for mentoring. Creating just an organization is not enough. In the workplace, we need to create an enabling environment for the younger ones to learn from us so they don't make the same errors that we have made. Skills are built through mentoring. Confidence, like I said, are built through mentoring. Ability to take challenges are built through mentoring. And they're also able to take challenges. Challenges that we could not take. When you mentor the young ones, you're able to do it. There is a lot of opportunities in engineering. For us to be able to have a sustainable world, we need to expose most of our female engineers to the different parts they can be involved in. We see that they're so straight-jacketed in looking for white-collar jobs and all. But there are a lot of things now they can do to create and make the environment sustainable. So mentoring exposes them to the different aspects of works that can be done. Just like Hans said when it came to renewable energy, there's a lot that women engineers can do in renewable, but we have not been exposed to it. So we need to really look out for women to mentor and create that network where women can mentor women, where women can support women, and where we can be a force so that others can say yes, because of the network we have built through WFEO, through every organization, I'm a better engineer today because we have been able to mentor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie, for those very, very inspiring words. And I'm sure that the women in Nigeria who are mentored by you and supported by your network are reaping huge benefits. And I think it's so important for all us women to support each other. I think this is how we will all grow together and get to those leadership positions. But before we get there, retention is important and understanding the rules of the game. And that's what mentoring is about. So thank you very much and for the work that you're doing and a very inspiring presentation. And now we come to Dr. Peggy Oti-Boating to give us some closing remarks. Dr. Peggy Oti-Boating is Director, Division of Science Policy and Capacity Building at UNESCO in Paris. She was formerly a Senior Program Specialist for Science and Technology for the African Network of Scientific and Technological Institutions in the UNESCO Regional Office in Harare, Zimbabwe. In this role, she provided technical assistance and support to the African Union Commission, regional economic blocs, member states, and universities, promoting science, technology, and innovation policies, capacity building, and gender in science and engineering. Dr. Peggy Oti-Boating has a master's from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, and a PhD in food science and technology from the University of Adelaide in Australia. Please welcome Peggy Oti-Boating. Peggy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes, sorry, I didn't see you. Welcome, Peggy, and we're so thrilled to have you here.
Yes, thank you very much, Marlene, for those kind words. And thank you very much, all the past, thank you, distinguished speakers. Thank you, friends. I've listened very attentively, and I can see many of what you see in myself. And thank you very much. And I would really want to acknowledge Marlene for your leadership in this. I'm really proud that in my journey, I've been able to work with you. And they said rising to the top. Yes, you have really risen to the top as one of the few women, presidents of WFEO. But not only that, but also led the proclamation of the World Engineering Day to say, let's bring it all together and we should have one day to celebrate it. So thank you very much. So we have a role model, on rising to the top. I'd also want to thank you very much for being an active, not only an author in the recent, not very recent, in a few hours ago, that we launched the Engineering for the Sustainable Development Report. You made great input into that. And I'm also pleased that we also have our colleague Soma. Soma also made contribution to it. So thank you very much. And we'll encourage all of you to download the report. I have listened very carefully to all the experiences, from all the women. And thank you, Professor Hoya, for, giving the background to rising to the top, your involvement in Africa and some, identifying some of the women that you work with, which is, very good, to see at least some men with us and you have the support, of women. I would not want to summarize what you have said, but I just want to encourage you and say UNESCO is working exactly towards what you've all said, in mentoring, STEM education, and making sure that we have women rise to the top. And as the Director of Science Policy and Capacity Building and Basic and Engineering Sciences is under, my mandate. I'll have a few, areas that I would like to see beyond this work. One is what you cannot manage, you cannot measure. And I say this because, we've just, finished one of the chapters in the UNESCO Science Report. And I'll encourage all of you to download it if you can. We say to be smart, the digital revolution will need to be inclusive. And this was a chapter we have on women, say closing the gap. And I'll just take a few statistics from there. And that's why I say what you cannot manage, you cannot measure. And I look at the list of speakers on here, and I try to look at the data and make a point. Unfortunately, we don't have the data for some of the countries, that we have. So I'll encourage you so that we can collect some of the data. But what I have, Poland, we have no data. Nigeria, we have no data. Ghana, we have 68% of women in engineering. With a striking difference is that Azerbaijan tops in parity of women in engineering, 52%. And I'm pleased to know that in Africa, Algeria tops is one of the leading countries with 47%. Malaysia is also 47%, and so on and so forth. And many countries, we don't even have data. So my recommendation is that women, if we don't have the data, we cannot make the policies. We need to have those data. And thank you, Carlien. If we don't have the data, we can't make those visibility. We need to have the data. So let's collect the data of women in engineering. That's one. Two is that, again, we also saw that there's very little mobility between women engineers in Africa. And some of you eloquently indicated that we need to collaborate across continent. It is only in terms of collaboration that we learn from each other. So please, let's collaborate. And again, one recommendation that I would like to share with you that I would like us to take on from here is, can we have competition of women, bringing women from across the world in looking at one particular challenge and solve that, bringing them together. We did a similar thing in Mondialogo Engineering Award some years ago, and it created a critical mass of young engineers. And some of them, are now even leading some of the engineering institutions, globally. So I'll call on you so that we can develop that critical mass of women engineers, critical mass of women enterprise, critical mass of women who can mentor other women. The third one is quality and relevance of the engineering education. Again, from the report we have, we found also that, although multinationals are making real good stride in artificial intelligence, and thank you, Lydia, for raising this, making great stride in artificial intelligence, they're still not closing the gender gap of women in AI. Why? Because of mentorship, of leadership, of exposing women to the new paradigms, the future of engineering. So again, I recommend women, and partners there, let us look at the new paradigm and train more women in many of the areas. And four is that there are very few women who pursue the engineering career. And again, Charlie indicated the reproductive role of women. That also exclude them from moving on in the engineering career. And I have engineers in my house. I have been, one of it, and Charlene, we work together in, really with the institution of engineers. They don't even, it's very difficult to make that inroad. But you can only make that inroad if you create the critical mass. We need more women in that. So the relevance of the education, the quality of the education, and the quantity of engineers, we need those. That is what we need. And women, we should work towards that. And also work with men like advocates, the advocates of Professor Hoya. Let's work with them. And I'm sure, many of you will have advocates. The fifth one is that we all talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. And I sit here and I know we cannot do all. Every country has their niche and they want to move on with the Sustainable Development Goal. But I sit here and see globally, I would want to commend 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals that women, this group, can take forward. One is Goal 1, ending poverty, cut across. And Marlene, you made very good presentation yesterday. And number 1, Goal 1 is very important. Then the Goal 9 is sitting there in the center. It is not by chance that Goal 9 is there. Goal 9 is there because it's going to drive the Sustainable Development Goal and requires science and technology. And this is where you come in, all the education, the curricula and all, we really need to do that. And this last one, which is 17, is partnership. So all I've said is the 3. So if you can even just take these 3 and, and leapfrog with it, and we're prepared to work with you to leapfrog with it, so that we can really make women, drive the Sustainable Development Goal. And then we can also reduce the gap between men and women in engineering, and also create that critical mass of the future of the women who will drive the Sustainable Development Goal. And then with doing that, we'll be able to develop the right policies. And somebody said, don't leave the women halfway. Hold a woman's hand. Take a couple, hold their hand through the journey. Be their friend, be their advocate. Give them a call. Because engineering itself is a difficult one. Let alone not having people to hold your hand. And please, women, support each other. There have been cases where women, have not supported each other. Where we want to, go above other women. But I would say together we will, together we can shine. Alone, when the candle goes off, it's darkness. But if there are so many of us, even if one candle goes off, the rest of the candle will continue to brighten the role of engineers globally, particularly women engineers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy, for that very passionate speech. And I think we all got a new mantra, a new goal, that women must now advance the Sustainable Development Goals. We've got to get together and push ahead. That's really wonderful. And thank you for inspiring us with that new idea, that new thought, and so much else that you had to say. I think that was truly wonderful. And we really look forward to your leadership at UNESCO and taking us forward in this area. There's so much for us to do. And we have here the link to the UNESCO engineering report in the chat. Please download it and refer to the statistics that Peggy has referred to. And the chapter on women in engineering has been authored by Dawn Bonfield, who will be the moderator for webinar 2 on the 8th of March. So I welcome all of you to join us on that day. So we're getting close to the end of our webinar. We don't have any questions and we're run out of time anyway. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And if anyone has a last comment, I'll open the floor, a last quick 1-sentence comment that people can go home with. I'll leave it to you to jump in and say something.
Together we
Soma?
shine. Together
we shine. Wonderful, yes.
Yeah, I think if you look at my story, I ended by saying, #we are stronger together. So I'm happy that Peggy said it again. We need to support one another. Together we are stronger.
Great, that's a great sentiment. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Hans. Maybe we, if everyone turns on their camera, June, if you turn on, we'll take a quick picture and smile, everyone. And thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. I hope that comes out. Let me just check it. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you on Monday the 8th, also International Women's Day, as well as World Engineering Day, continuing celebrations. And I'm sure you'll hear some more very inspiring stories. And my thanks again to IFEES and GEDC, to Hans and Soma in particular, for leading this project. And we've given you the link to buying the book, and I thoroughly recommend that you buy the book. Here's the book, Rising to the Top. And well done, and thank you for joining us all.
Thank you, Marlene. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Hans, especially for this initiative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlene, so
Yeah,
much.
thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to
I
everyone.
hope to meet you all very soon after pandemic time.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Hope that next year we will meet, for example, in Paris at that time or wherever, and to shake hands and to really cooperate, looking into our eyes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Marlene.
Bye.